Tonight is the night. If you have an opinion about the Community Development Action Plan, there's a hearing tonight on which you can have an opportunity to comment on that. But what is that all about? Here with us this morning, our Community Development Manager in the city of Battle Creek, Chris Lussier. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Richard.
And also here today, our city commissioner, one of them, Andy Helmboldt. Good morning to you.
Morning, Richard. Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. What is this plan?
So the annual action plan for the city of Battle Creek is essentially coordinates all of the community development activities that the city of Battle Creek implements in the city over the course of a year. It's also the application to the federal government, to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, for federal dollars for housing and community development activities in the city. We get about anywhere from $1.2 to $1.5 million in federal community development funds. And so this plan basically tells the federal government how we intend to use those dollars in the coming year.
And how do we intend to use them, generally speaking, Chris?
We primarily fund housing activities. We have a minor home repair program. We have a more substantial rehab program. These are resources for homeowners. We have a tenant-based rental assistance program that we typically fund. This provides assistance for folks that are seeking housing. Usually this goes towards helping people that are already working through some sort of program to get themselves back on their feet. So they might be in a jobs program. They might be in a year-long program to deal with substance addiction issues, and housing has become an issue for them, and in order for them to complete the program, they need to get stable housing, and so this provides some subsidies for that. We fund demolition, some code compliance activities, rental registration, and abandoned building monitoring.
Just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Is this under the umbrella of the Community Development Block Grant thing?
The Community Development Block Grant makes up about $1.1 million typically. Okay. In this past year, that's about how much money we got through Community Development Block Grant. And the rest are called Home Investment Partnership Funds. Those are typically go towards just affordable housing. So.
All right. So Chris is in the trenches on this and is doing the daily work on this. Andy, you get the broader view as a city commissioner. What are your thoughts about this plan?
Well, Chris is most definitely in the trenches on this. He lives and breathes this stuff every day. From my perspective, from an elected official's perspective, this is work that I believe government ought to be doing. These are federal, our federal tax dollars at work, given over to communities to do what they think is best for them, to help develop their communities and to make sure people, who need some assistance, rental assistance, help fixing up their home, things like that, are getting it. And I really believe that these dollars from the federal government have a huge impact on the community, larger than the dollar amount. I think this is a really efficient way to spend tax money in communities, to develop and to make sure communities are at least attempting to stay whole, to make sure everyone has an opportunity to have stable housing.
All right, so these seemingly are important things. And when we come back in a minute, we'll talk a little more about this. The Community Development Action Plan hearing is tonight in the city of Battle Creek. And incidentally, we've spent several months, once a month, talking about how you as citizens can comment on budget issues. And a lot of the time we took the angle that you can call up your elected officials and legislators at the local, state, and federal levels and voice your opinions about these things, and they get heard. But here's another opportunity right here to speak up about this stuff, and we'll talk about that more coming up shortly on 95.3 WBCK. We're here with the City Commissioner, Andy Helmboldt, and Chris Lussier, Community Development Manager in Battle Creek. Tonight is the night you get a chance to comment on the Community Development Action Plan, which you've just heard has some pretty far-reaching implications in the community. Federal dollars that go toward a lot of things that are tremendously helpful. And I guess two things we want to talk about. One, this is part of the regular City Commission meeting tonight, yes. Andy, right? And so one important note is this comes up pretty early in the agenda.
Yeah, meeting at 7 p.m. tonight at City Hall on the third floor. And yeah, these public hearings simply happen at the very beginning. There's an odd presentation here or there, but this will happen fairly early.
Okay.
So it's not like you have to sit through the whole meeting and go through a bunch of other business. If you want to comment on this, it'll happen toward the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, so don't be late either.
Don't be late.
All right, don't want to miss that. Chris, are these the funds that the Trump administration is threatening to cut?
Yeah, so in Trump's proposed budget, he completely cut or zeroed out the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership plans. So that would be going from about $1.1 to $1.5 million a year in Battle Creek to zero.
Yeah, and that perspective is across the country, right? So
that's right. Yes, that'd be in every city.
Right. These I don't know enough about this. Probably should. These are, I presume, funds that are designated according to size of city and so on.
Yeah, they allocate to cities over 50,000 in population, so we just barely make the cut. And then every city over 50,000 gets a formula allocation. Yeah.
All right, so $1 million, that's pretty good, even though we're just making that cut.
Yeah, and in the past we've gotten as much as $2.5 million, maybe a decade ago. So they have kind of come down every year. This is the president's proposal is a pretty dramatic shift or change. And then in the last month I've been in contact with folks from HUD just to sort of get some counsel about these kinds of proposals from presidents, and really what they've said is, well, that's a proposal. It still has to go through the budget process, and it's usually a starting point for some discussion. So we'll see what happens. What's
the City Commission's viewpoint on this? Has there been discussion about the notion that this money can go away, Andy?
Not to my knowledge. We haven't had any discussion other than, oh, hey,
right.
Trump wants to just not do this, I guess. But like Chris said, that's really a congressional decision that has to work its way through Congress. So if it were to get to the point where it would look like Congress was seriously considering not doing these community development block grants, then absolutely we would be out ahead of that. Starting to wrap our minds around what we would do as a city to provide those services in some way.
Yeah.
Whether that would be, all the money out of our general fund or partnering with other organizations in town, probably some combination thereof. But a lot of good work happens with this funding.
Yeah, it sounds like, though, the purview right now is to not panic and just sort of let this play out. And from what we know of the president's approach, this sometimes is his approach. Let's start with a stark idea and then let it roll back from there and see what happens. So it sounds like, Chris, you've already done some legwork, but the notion is there's a legislature that probably wouldn't let that go away.
Well, I think there's folks that think that these programs are pretty impactful, and I think cities across the country realize the value, particularly of community development block grant dollars. They give communities a lot of flexibility to develop programs that really fill gaps in their community. So, in the city of Battle Creek, just to use one example, the minor home repair program, we serve a lot of seniors in that program. And the city of Battle Creek has 1,887 women over the age of 62 living alone in it. That's from the last census. And when we looked at that number, you find that a lot of folks have paid off their mortgages, and being able to stay in their home is a really great affordable option. There may not be a more affordable option.
Right.
They may be on a fixed income, however. So when a crisis happens, if the roof starts to go, staying on top of that, those costs can be challenging. But if they can get over that cost, then they can stay in that home for a long time. So it's not just that we're helping a family, we're actually giving them a great long-term housing option with that small investment we're making. The other thing we found when we looked into that was one of the ways in which we get vacant buildings is because seniors stay in their homes for a lot longer than they're able to maintain them. And we end up with houses that aren't sellable on the private market after because they have not been maintained. So it serves double duty. And I can actually continue to make points on how this program, that one investment will continue to have like sort of compounded impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of our programs aren't just paying off in one way or two ways. You know, we're certainly trying to help individuals, but we're trying to leverage much more, and we're trying to have a neighborhood-wide benefit. So these dollars really do affect a lot of people, not just the folks that are benefiting directly from them. So,
and we'll talk more about those in just a second on 95.3 WBCK. Tonight is your chance to comment on the Community Development Action Plan. It's part of the regular City Commission meeting tonight, and as Andy said, it'll happen quickly in the agenda after the 7 o'clock call to order. A few more minutes on this subject in just a second. 95.3 WBCK Commissioner Andy Helmboldt here, and Chris Lussier, Director of Community Development here in the city of Battle Creek. So 7 o'clock tonight, City Commission chambers, regular City Commission meeting, but the hearing on this special money is right there close to the head of the agenda, and we'll repeat again where that is and when in case you aren't clear. So, Chris, you've been pretty clear about how these dollars help. And from both of your perspectives, if we don't have this money or it continues to dwindle, which it has been, that was part of the discussion we had with the city manager some time ago about these community development funds. But can we expect to see, if this were to just go away, differences, visual differences in the city as we looked around at how those dollars are not being put to work? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chris could put numbers on it, but you would absolutely see a difference. If we hadn't been using this money the way we've been using it over the last decade or so, Battle Creek would be a visually different place walking down the street.
Mm-hmm. I bring that up because I presume that sometimes this work gets done quietly and we don't realize how it's affecting things. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've made incredible gains in addressing blight and vacancy in neighborhoods. Part of that is ensuring that properties don't become blighted or vacant.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the minor home repair example, if we can put a roof on a property, when that becomes a problem, instead of waiting 4 or 5 years, the chances of that becoming a vacant building are much, much less. I mean, we probably get 20 vacant buildings through that process alone. Each year. Those are properties then we would need to tear down somehow or find some way to deal with. They would depress housing values in neighborhoods. We're proposing to fund a lead hazard assessment program. Over the next couple of years, we're hoping to intervene in 60 families that are experiencing lead poisoning in children, be able to intervene and help those families assisted. I mean, those kids are going to be going to school in our public schools, and if they're not having to struggle with lead poisoning, what an incredible impact that would make.
And that would come from these funds.
We should say real quick, because this is a good point. When Chris talks about lead poisoning in our community, we're not talking about the water. We're talking about housing issues, old lead-based paint, and we have a more than our share of this older housing stock where the paint is an issue.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not a water thing, which has gotten so much publicity and in a very extreme situation. But old paint, old houses, this is still, that's the more mainstream issue with that.
Yes. Right. So we have about 300 children over the last 5 years that had lead poisoning coming from lead paint in homes. And so we think we can make a considerable dent in that number over the course of the next 5 years. And that's what we've laid out a plan to do. So.
Okay. All right. So it's tonight, 7 o'clock. Let's tell them again where, Andy.
At City Hall, downtown on Division Street.
Okay. And this comment period about the Community Development Action Plan comes up pretty quickly in the agenda. So don't go thinking you have time to get there because they'll have other business first. It's actually the reverse.
And the plan is available on our website. If you go to battlecreek.mi.gov and just search for annual action plan, you'll find it there. It'd be good to, I mean, it's a pretty large document, but this has only been, a summary or a taste, you can read through there and see all the breadth of work that goes into this.
Okay. Tonight's the night. We'll get our chance to speak up on this issue, and thanks for reminding us, both of you, Chris and Andy, today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.